The courtroom was silent until the sound of a slap cracked through the air. Emily Carter staggered back, her cheek burning red. Gasps erupted from the benches. Even the bailiff froze, unsure if he should intervene. Her mother, Martha, sat trembling at the defendant's table. She wanted to rise, but her wrists were chained. The judge didn't say a word. Richard Hale simply adjusted his glasses, almost pretending he hadn't seen what just happened. The one who delivered the slap, Victoria Lane, a star attorney in her crimson suit, smirked. "That's what you deserve," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. For a moment, Emily felt the world tilt. She was humiliated, powerless, every eye in the room piercing her like blades. Cameras flashed. Daniel Ross, the reporter, captured every second. The headline was already forming in his head. But then, something shifted. Emily straightened, her gaze no longer that of a victim. She walked toward the bench with a calmness that unsettled even Victoria. The gallery buzzed in confusion, and in the next heartbeat, Emily did the unthinkable. She stepped past Judge Hale and lowered herself into his seat. Gasps turned into shouts. The courtroom shook with chaos. Who was this woman? And why, after being humiliated, did she now hold the gavel in her hand? The room erupted. "Sit down!" someone shouted. "She's lost her mind!" But Emily didn't flinch. Her hand rested on the polished wood of the bench. Her fingers grazed the gavel, heavy and cold. For a second, she felt the entire court bend under her silence. Judge Richard Hale finally rose. His face was pale, his lips twitching. "Miss Carter," he said, voice shaking with restrained fury, "step away from there." Immediately, Emily's eyes locked on him. "No," she whispered, barely audible, but the defiance in her tone carried through the chamber. Victoria Lane laughed sharply, her heels clicking as she advanced. "What is this? A circus? You think you can play judge now? Sweetheart, this is real life. You don't belong up there." Emily's cheek still stung from the slap, but it wasn't pain she carried now. It was fire. "Neither do you," she shot back. The crowd gasped. Martha, trembling at the defense table, looked at her daughter with wide, fearful eyes. "Emily, please," she murmured, barely above a whisper. She feared this boldness would only make things worse. Daniel Ross, camera still in hand, leaned forward, sensing a headline bigger than he could have imagined. His voice cut through the chaos. "Wait, why isn't the judge stopping this? Why did he let the assault happen?" All eyes turned to Richard Hale. He adjusted his robe, sweat forming on his brow. "Order!" he barked, slamming his hand on the desk, but the word carried no weight. For the first time, he wasn't in control. Emily's voice rose, steady now. "You all want to know why I'm sitting here? Fine. Let me tell you." The room hushed. Even Victoria's mocking smile faltered. "My mother is accused of fraud she didn't commit. She's being sacrificed to protect someone else, someone powerful, and everyone in this courtroom knows it." Her voice trembled, but it was conviction, not fear. Gasps spread through the gallery. Whispers swirled. Victoria's face tightened. "Baseless accusations. You have no proof." Emily's lips curved, faint but fierce. "Don't I?" She pulled a folded envelope from her bag. It was creased, worn, as if it had been hidden for months. She laid it on the bench in front of her. "This is a signed deposition," Emily said clearly, "from an employee of Blackwood Enterprises, the company behind every bribe in this courthouse." The name hit like thunder. Martha's hands flew to her mouth. Judge Hale's color drained. Victoria's smirk shattered. And Daniel? His eyes burned with hunger. This was the story of the decade. "You!" Victoria's voice cracked, but she steadied it with venom. "That's forged." A pathetic stunt. Emily slammed the gavel down once, the sharp crack silencing the room. "Then let the jury see for themselves. Unless, of course, you're afraid of what they'll read." The crowd roared. Spectators leaned forward, phones raised, recording every second. The bailiff hesitated, torn between his duty and the storm unraveling before him. Richard Hale stepped closer, lowering his voice. His words meant only for Emily. "Do you know what you're doing?" "You're playing with fire." Emily turned her head, her eyes like steel. "No, I'm putting it out." "For the first time," Hale faltered. His authority slipped through his fingers. Daniel's camera clicked again, capturing Hale's hesitation. And in that moment, he knew. This wasn't just about a trial. This was about a system crumbling under its own lies. Victoria, realizing the tide was shifting, lunged for the envelope. But Emily anticipated it. She snatched it back, holding it high for all to see. "This," she declared, "is proof. Proof my mother was framed. Proof that this court is rotten." "Chaos. Pure chaos," the gallery shouted. Martha wept. Daniel nearly dropped his camera from shaking hands. And then, silence. Because Richard Hale slammed his fist down, harder than ever before. "Enough," he roared, his voice breaking. His eyes darted from Emily to the envelope, to the crowd. His mask of composure was gone. Emily didn't move. Her hand was steady, her gaze unblinking. "Judge Hale," she said, her tone low but cutting, "you can order me to leave. You can try to silence me. But the truth is already out. People have heard it. Cameras have seen it. You can't bury it anymore." The words hung in the air like smoke. Heavy, inescapable. Victoria's voice cracked with desperation. "She's bluffing. Arrest her." But the bailiff didn't move. The spectators murmured, their eyes wide. No one dared touch Emily now. Daniel finally spoke, his voice trembling with excitement. "This is bigger than one trial. This is corruption at the highest level." The weight of his words settled on the room. Martha sobbed quietly, whispering, "Emily, what have you done?" But Emily didn't flinch. She sat tall in the judge's seat, the gavel in her hand, her cheek still burning from the slap. Only now, no one saw her as a victim. They saw her as something else entirely. And Victoria, she realized too late that the power she had flaunted so recklessly was slipping away. The silence didn't last. Victoria recovered first. Her heels struck the floor like gunshots as she marched toward the bench. "This is illegal," she spat, voice sharp as glass. "She's not a judge." "She's a child, throwing a tantrum. Everyone here knows that deposition is worthless." Emily didn't blink. "If it's worthless, then why do you look terrified?" The gallery erupted with whispers again, buzzing like bees. Judge Richard Hale forced his voice into calm, but his hand trembled as he tugged at his collar. "Miss Carter, you have no authority here. Step down before I'm forced to hold you in contempt." Emily leaned forward, her voice steady, deliberate. "You already held me in contempt when you let her strike me in front of everyone. You didn't stop it. You didn't object." That silence spoke louder than anything I could say. The judge froze, as if she'd thrown cold water in his face. Cameras caught every second. Daniel's lens zoomed in, catching Hale's jaw tighten, his eyes flicker with guilt. Victoria seized on the hesitation. She jabbed a manicured finger at Emily. "She's derailing due process. Don't let her manipulate you. Bailiff, remove her now." But the bailiff didn't move. He stared at Hale, waiting for a command. The hesitation stretched. Victoria's voice cracked with rage. "Judge Hale, order it." And that's when Daniel spoke up again, his reporter's instinct sharp. "Why don't you?" "What are you afraid of, Judge?" Every eye turned. Every camera lens pointed at Richard Hale. He looked trapped, like an animal cornered. Emily's voice cut through the tension. "I'll tell you why. Because he knows I'm right. He knows who's pulling the strings here. And it's not him." Victoria's face hardened. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so only Emily could hear. "You think you're clever, don't you? You think a piece of paper makes you untouchable? Let me tell you something, sweetheart. Blackwood doesn't lose. He built this city. He built this court. And if you go against him, he'll destroy you. Emily met her eyes, unshaken. Then let him try. The defiance rattled Victoria more than she'd admit. She turned sharply toward Hale, whispering something quick, urgent, her hand gripping his arm. The judge flinched at her touch, his eyes darting nervously around the room. Daniel noticed. His camera clicked, capturing the subtle exchange. He knew what the world would see. A judge, compromised, cornered. Hale cleared his throat, trying to regain control. Enough of this circus. Bailiff. He stopped mid-sentence. His gaze landed on the envelope still clutched in Emily's hand. The weight of it seemed unbearable. Emily saw it. She leaned back in the chair, her voice calm but cutting. You recognize this, don't you? You've seen one before. Maybe even signed off on one. The judge's eyes widened. That's... He stopped himself. The crowd caught the hesitation. The whispers grew into shouts. Is the judge involved? Someone cried from the gallery. He knows something! Victoria tried to shout over them. Baseless! She's twisting words! But her voice was drowned in the storm of voices. Martha, still seated at the defense table, covered her face with her hands. Her heart pounded with dread. She never wanted her daughter to bear this burden. Emily rose slightly in the judge's seat, holding the envelope higher. This deposition doesn't just mention Blackwood Enterprises. It details transactions. Money funneled directly to court officials. To judges, the word hit like a hammer. Richard Hale staggered back as if struck. That's a lie! Emily's eyes narrowed. Then swear it under oath. Right here. Right now the courtroom went wild. Reporters stood, cameras flashing. Daniel shouted, Judge Hale, will you swear? Are you willing to deny it under oath? Hale's mouth opened and closed, but no words came. Sweat trickled down his temple. His silence screamed louder than denial. Victoria lunged forward again, desperate, her veneer of control cracking. This girl is destroying the integrity of the court. She should be arrested, not listened to. Emily's voice thundered back. The integrity of the court was destroyed long before I walked in here. I'm just the one shining a light on it. The gallery cheered, clapping, some even rising to their feet. Hale slammed his fist down, yelling for order, but it was useless. He had lost them. Victoria hissed in his ear. Pull yourself together. Do something before she ruins everything. But Hale looked broken. A man caught between truth and ruin. He sank back into his chair, his robe suddenly heavy, his authority stripped away. Emily, still standing tall, knew this was only the beginning. The enemy wasn't just Victoria or Hale. It was the shadow looming behind them. She spoke again, her voice steady but sharp enough to cut glass. Blackwood may have built this court, but he doesn't own justice. And if I have to burn every lie to the ground to save my mother, then so be it. The words echoed, bold, unshakable. And in the back of the courtroom, unnoticed until now, a man in a dark suit watched silently, his expression unreadable, his presence chilling. Ethan Blackwood had arrived. The air shifted the moment he stood. Ethan Blackwood didn't need to raise his voice. His presence alone was enough. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a tailored charcoal suit, he moved with the calm authority of someone used to owning every room he entered. The gallery hushed. Even the rowdiest spectators fell silent as he walked down the aisle, his polished shoes echoing against the marble floor. Emily's grip on the gavel tightened. For the first time, she felt a shiver trace her spine. Blackwood reached the center of the courtroom and turned slowly, as if surveying property he already owned. Then his eyes found Emily. Cold, calculated, amused. Well, he said, his voice smooth like velvet over steel. It seems the circus finally has its ringmaster. Laughter rippled from a few corners of the gallery, nervous and forced. Victoria nearly sagged with relief. She rushed to his side, her voice low and urgent. You need to shut this down, Ethan. She has the deposition. He raised a hand, silencing her without a word. His gaze never left Emily. "Miss Carter," he began, his tone polite, almost gentle. "I admire your courage. Truly. Few people would dare sit where you are sitting. But courage without wisdom," he tilted his head slightly, "is suicide." Emily forced herself not to look away. If exposing the truth is suicide, then so be it. His smile widened, predatory. Spoken like someone who doesn't yet understand the rules. "You think a piece of paper makes you powerful? That deposition you cling to? Do you know how easy it is to erase paper? To erase people?" Gasps echoed through the room. His threat wasn't veiled. It was plain, brutal, undeniable. Daniel Ross, still clutching his camera, shouted from the side, "Are you threatening her?" On record? Blackwood turned his head slowly toward him, eyes narrowing. "No," he said smoothly. "I'm educating her." Emily slammed the gavel once, the crack cutting through the tension. "This is a courtroom, not your boardroom. You don't own this seat." Blackwood chuckled, low and menacing. "Don't I? Every deal that built this courthouse, every campaign that put that robe on Hale's shoulders, it all traces back to me. I've been running this court longer than you've been alive." Judge Hale winced, his shame laid bare before the world. Martha, still trembling, whispered hoarsely, "Emily, don't push him." But Emily couldn't stop. Not now. She stood. "If you've been running this court, then today is the day it ends. Because people are watching. They're recording. They'll see you for what you are." The gallery erupted in cheers again, but Blackwood raised a single hand and silence fell like a curtain. His control was chilling, magnetic. "People forget," he said calmly, "that the crowd doesn't decide justice. Power does. And power, Miss Carter, has always been mine." He turned his gaze to Hale, who sat hunched and broken. "Richard, remove her." The judge opened his mouth, but no words came. His hands shook as he fumbled with his robe. The command lodged in his throat, strangled by fear and guilt. "Pathetic," Blackwood muttered under his breath. His attention snapped back to Emily. "Fine. If the judge won't do it, I'll remind you myself what happens when children play at being adults." He stepped forward, slow and deliberate. The gallery tensed, half expecting violence. Emily's pulse hammered, but she refused to move. "You can try to intimidate me." But the truth. She lifted the envelope higher. "We'll outlive your threats." Blackwood stopped just feet from her. He leaned in, his voice a whisper meant only for her, though the courtroom strained to hear. "Truth is fragile. People are forgetful. Cameras break. Witnesses vanish. I can snap this world in half with a phone call, and you, sitting in that chair, would be nothing but a memory." For a moment, the weight of his words pressed down on her chest like stone. But then she thought of her mother, shackled, broken, accused of crimes she never committed. Emily straightened. "You can erase papers. You can erase people. But you can't erase me while I'm right here, standing in front of everyone. And you can't erase the fear in your eyes." Gasps shot through the gallery. Blackwood's smile twitched, faltering for the first time. Daniel's camera clicked furiously. He shouted, "I got that on record!" Everyone saw it. Victoria lunged again, desperate. "Confiscate that camera! He can't—" But the bailiff stepped in front of her this time, his jaw tight. For the first time, he wasn't following her lead. The crowd sensed it. The shift, the crack in Blackwood's armor. Emily lifted the gavel again, her voice carrying like thunder. "Ethan Blackwood, you don't rule this court. You've poisoned it. But today, the people see the truth, and truth spreads faster than your lies." The gallery roared in approval, louder than ever. Blackwood stood still, expression unreadable, the storm of voices crashing around him. Then, slowly, he smiled again. A dangerous smile, "You're bold," he said softly. "I like that. But boldness comes with a price. You've declared war on me, Miss Carter. And I don't lose wars." His words were calm, but the menace in them chilled the room. And as he turned, walking toward the exit with Victoria scrambling behind him, the crowd parted in silence, as if the devil himself were passing through. Emily stood in the judge's chair, the gavel still raised, but her heart pounded. She had won this round, but Blackwood's words echoed in her skull. War. It had only just begun. The next morning, the world had changed. Emily woke to her phone buzzing endlessly. News alerts, missed calls, messages from strangers. Every headline screamed her name. Daughter of defendant hijacks courtroom. Emily Carter, hero or criminal? Blackwood speaks out. Young woman endangers justice. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, the glow from the screen painting her face pale. The video of her slamming the gavel had gone viral overnight. Millions had seen her defy Victoria, Hale, and even Ethan Blackwood himself. But the headlines weren't celebrating her. They were tearing her apart. Her mother's case had been buried under the noise. Now it wasn't about Martha Carter's innocence. It was about Emily's rebellion. The TV in the corner flickered to life. Victoria Lane's face filled the screen, perfectly composed. "What Miss Carter did yesterday was reckless," she told a reporter. "She disrupted due process, endangered the dignity of the court, and waved around fabricated evidence. The people deserve better." Emily clenched her fists. "Fabricated," she muttered bitterly. And then Ethan Blackwood appeared, his voice calm, his tone measured, his suit immaculate. "I have great sympathy for Miss Carter and her mother," he said smoothly. "But emotions cannot replace law. What she did yesterday undermines justice itself. We will pursue every legal remedy available to ensure this kind of spectacle never happens again." Emily felt her chest tighten. It was happening. He was rewriting the story, turning her courage into crime. Her phone buzzed again. Daniel Ross. She answered. His voice came fast, urgent. "Emily, don't read the headlines. They're spinning it hard. Blackwood's got every outlet in his pocket." "I can see that," she whispered. "But listen," Daniel continued. "People are still talking. Half the country thinks you're a hero. The other half thinks you're insane. That division, it scares him. He wants total control, not debate. That's where we hit him." Emily closed her eyes, her thoughts heavy. "I just wanted to save my mom." "I know," Daniel said softly. "But now it's bigger than her. It's about the system, and he knows you're the spark." Before Emily could respond, a sharp knock rattled her door. She opened it to find two officers standing grimly. One held a folded paper. "Emily Carter?" Her stomach dropped. "Yes?" "You're under investigation for contempt of court and obstruction of justice," the officer said flatly. "You'll need to come with us." Martha, frail and pale from the stress, rushed forward. "No! She didn't do anything wrong!" The officer's expression didn't change. "Ma'am, please step back." Emily's hands shook as cold cuffs closed around her wrists. She glanced at her mother, at Daniel, who had rushed over, camera already recording. "This is Blackwood," Emily said through clenched teeth. "This is his doing." Daniel shouted, "Don't touch her!" "She's not a criminal. She's exposing corruption." But the officers ignored him, pulling Emily toward the waiting car. Within an hour, the image was everywhere. Emily Carter, wrists bound, being led into a police cruiser. The headlines shifted again. "Courtroom intruder arrested. Daughter of defendant faces charges." Blackwood had struck back, and hard. At the holding cell, Emily sat on the cold bench, her mind racing. The walls closed in, but her resolve did not break. Victoria appeared on the other side of the bars, her heels clicking against the concrete. She looked like she had walked straight out of a press conference. Perfect hair, flawless smile. "Hello, darling," Victoria purred, Quite the mess you've made." Emily glared. "Enjoy your victory. It won't last." Victoria smirked. "Oh, this isn't victory. This is just cleaning up." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "You see, Ethan doesn't need to fight you in the courtroom. He fights you out there." She gestured vaguely toward the world beyond the walls, where the headlines bury you alive. Emily's jaw clenched. Victoria's smile widened. "By the time this is over, no one will remember your mother's case. No one will care if she rots in prison. They'll only remember you, the girl who lost her mind and pretended to be a judge." Her words stabbed deeper than Emily wanted to admit, but she forced herself to meet Victoria's eyes. "You're scared. That's why you're here. If I were irrelevant, you wouldn't waste your time." For the first time, Victoria's smile faltered. Emily leaned forward, her voice low and fierce. "You can smear me. You can lock me up, but every lie you tell proves I hit a nerve. And when the truth comes out, and it will, people will remember you as the woman who tried to silence me." The guard appeared, signaling Victoria's time was up. She straightened, her mask snapping back into place. "Enjoy your cell, Miss Carter. It suits you." As she walked away, Emily's resolve hardened like steel. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a war not just for her mother's freedom, but for her own name, her own truth, and the soul of the entire system. The iron door slammed shut. Emily sat on the cold bench, her wrists sore from the cuffs. The fluorescent light buzzed above, flickering like a cruel reminder that she wasn't free anymore. For the first time since the trial began, silence pressed against her. No jury, no gavel, no audience, just her breath, and the taste of betrayal lingering in her mouth. She whispered, "I'm not done." Not yet. Outside, Daniel paced in front of the courthouse. Cameras swarmed him like flies. Reporters shouted questions. "Is Emily guilty? Was the judge biased? Did you leak documents?" Daniel's hands trembled. He wasn't built for spotlights. But Emily's voice echoed in his mind, her calm whisper when she was dragged away. "If they cage me, speak for me." So he stopped pacing. He turned toward the cameras, and for the first time, his timid voice cut through the chaos. "She's innocent, and I can prove it." Gasps. The microphone surged closer. His chest tightened, but he didn't back down. Meanwhile, in her cell, Emily worked with scraps. A stub of a pencil, torn notebook paper from another inmate. She wrote furiously, notes, timelines, names. She mapped the corruption like arteries on a beating heart. Every connection pointed back to Blackwood. But she couldn't get it out. Not through locked bars, not through guards watching her every move. So she slipped the folded pages to the only person she trusted inside, the gray-haired woman 2 cells down. The woman had eyes sharp as glass and a quiet reputation, smuggling letters out to families. "Get this to Daniel," Emily begged, "no matter what." The woman smirked. "You're brave, kid." Or stupid. "Both," Emily said. That night, Daniel found the papers tucked in his coat pocket, a miracle or a crime. He stayed up until dawn, tracing Emily's handwriting. The map of corruption was bigger than he'd feared. False medical reports, bribed witnesses, money laundering tied to Blackwood's empire. Daniel's fear burned away, replaced with something new: anger. So he acted. First, he leaked pieces anonymously online: forums, independent blogs, underground channels. The story spread like wildfire, whispered from one screen to the next. Then he confronted mainstream media. At first, they laughed. A paralegal waving papers against a billionaire? A caged woman claiming innocence? But Daniel persisted. He showed receipts, transfers, signatures. He even played audio, a shaky recording Emily had managed to smuggle out weeks earlier. Judge Hale's voice, bitter and drunk, confessing debts to Blackwood. The news anchors froze. The clip replayed on loop. By morning, #FreeEmily trended nationwide. Inside, Emily heard it all through the guards' radios. Her heart pounded with every headline. Innocent woman framed. Judge Hale under scrutiny. Blackwood's empire under fire. The guards sneered, but some looked uneasy. The whispers in the hall were changing. One night, Daniel managed a visit. His hands pressed against the glass, eyes blazing with a fire Emily had never seen in him. "You're not alone," he said. "The world's listening now." Emily smiled faintly, tired but fierce. "Then let's make them hear everything." But Blackwood wasn't idle. His empire struck back. New articles smeared Daniel as a desperate intern obsessed with his boss. They painted Emily as manipulative, a woman who seduced her team to rise in law. On talk shows, pundits laughed. "She's just a disgraced attorney playing victim." Daniel slammed his fist against the table in his tiny apartment. "They're twisting everything." Emily's letter came the next day. Truth bends but doesn't break. Push harder. And so he did. Daniel started live streams, not polished, not scripted, just him, raw and furious, telling the story of Emily, the courtroom slap, the corrupt judge, the billionaire's shadow. His honesty cut deeper than any glossy news segment. People connected, ordinary folks. Strangers who'd never met Emily sent letters, donations, even stood outside the prison holding signs. "We believe you." The tide was shifting, but Blackwood made one last move. Late at night, Daniel received a message from an unknown number. A photo of Emily, asleep in her cell. The caption read, "Drop it, or she won't wake up." Daniel's blood froze. He looked at the city lights outside his window, every glowing dot a reminder of how powerless he still was. Yet deep inside, something hardened. Fear had no place left to live in him. He picked up his phone. He started another live stream. His voice cracked, but his eyes were steady. "They're threatening her life now. And I won't stop. If they come for me, so be it. But if you're watching, if you care about justice, stand with her." The comments exploded. Thousands, then tens of thousands. A movement born in real time. Emily, behind bars, didn't know yet. But the storm outside was only getting bigger. And this time, it wasn't just her fight. The dry clang of metal echoed through the cell. Emily was startled when the iron door swung open. Two unfamiliar guards who had never been on duty here before entered. Their eyes were cold as steel. One of them whispered, "Follow us, Emily." No noise. Orders from above, her whole body tensed. She knew this was not normal procedure. She swallowed, remembering the dozens of articles Daniel had just released, exposing the Blackwood group, money laundering, bribery of judges, silencing of witnesses. Public opinion was exploding, and this was the price. They led her down a dark hallway, down to a little-known basement. There were no cameras. Emily could see clearly this was no longer the law. This was a trap. Meanwhile, in Blackwood's office, Victor Blackwood was slamming his cane into the floor. The news on the big screen flashed red. Wolf Corp involved in corruption scandal. Emily Wolf becomes anti-black power icon. He growled, "Daniel Spencer!" "Emily, you little bitch! You think you can bring me down with some cheap articles?" But he didn't realize that at that moment his allies were pulling the strings. Some politicians began to avoid him, afraid of being implicated. Wolf Corp's stock plummeted. Blackwood grew angrier, and his orders grew more indiscriminate. Emily was pushed into an old wooden chair in the dark room. A figure emerged from the corner. It was none other than one of Blackwood's closest henchmen, the one who had appeared in court, standing silently behind him. "Emily Wolf," he said, his voice sarcastic. "The boss doesn't want you alive to see the final hearing. You're too loud." She bit her lip, keeping her composure, but in her mind she repeated one thought. "I can't die here, not when the truth is only days away." Outside, Daniel Spencer was live streaming to thousands of viewers. He had just received an anonymous message. They're going to kill her in prison. Tonight, his heart was pounding. He shouted into the camera, "If something happens to Emily Wolfe, it's the clearest evidence that Blackwood has manipulated the system. We can't be silent. Share it. Call the police. Tonight is the line between justice and darkness." People poured into the streets, surrounding the prison. The shouts echoed throughout the city. "Release Emily Wolfe! Justice for Emily!" In the dark room, the henchman pulled out a dagger, the steel glinting. Emily closed her eyes briefly, but then opened them, looking straight at him. "If you kill me, everything will be revealed. Daniel has the evidence. And you know what? He's not immortal. Blackwood is just a scared man." The henchman hesitated. At that moment, the sirens of police cars echoed in the distance, getting closer and closer. The noise outside the prison rolled like waves. One of the two prison guards muttered, "We are surrounded." The man holding the knife gritted his teeth, but his hands were shaking. Instead of stabbing down, he retreated, cursing. The door was suddenly broken open. Daniel and his group of lawyers and police entered. Emily was still sitting there, panting, but her eyes were shining. At the same time, in Blackwood's office, his phone rang continuously. Messages were pouring in. Allies vote to withdraw. Police are asking for an arrest warrant. Media is surrounding the house live. Victor Blackwood, who had once been confident and invincible, suddenly felt a chill down his spine. He whispered a sentence he had never said before. "Maybe I really lost this time." Emily was brought into the light. The cheers of thousands of people welcomed her. But as soon as she raised her head and saw the big screen broadcasting live, a new news appeared. Blackwood is no longer at the mansion. He is suspected of fleeing the city. Emily squeezed Daniel's hand. She understood. The war was not over. The most dangerous man had not disappeared. And this time, he had nothing to lose. Emily's heart pounded as the gavel hit the wood. But this time, it wasn't Judge Hale's hand. It was hers. For one split second, silence swallowed the courtroom. Every pair of eyes fixed on Emily, who had been dragged into chains only weeks ago. Now, against all odds, she stood where Judge Hale once stood, on the raised bench, black robe draped over her shoulders, Daniel's trembling hands having just placed it there. She wasn't the official judge, not yet. But she had been called to preside temporarily after Hale had been suspended for conflict of interest, and the irony of fate was almost unbearable. Blackwood was in the room too. His face looked carved from stone, his usual calm fractured by a crack of disbelief. For once, he didn't control the stage. Emily looked down at him, the same man who had tried to bury her, who had used money, power, and the press to twist the narrative, who had stolen her father's legacy, and now he stood where defendants stood. "Mr. Blackwood." Emily's voice trembled only slightly, but her eyes burned with steel. "Do you understand the charges brought against you today?" A murmur ran through the gallery. Daniel, standing close, clutched his notebook as if it were armor. Victoria, sitting further back, crossed her arms, a cold smile flickering at her lips. She hadn't come to help Emily, but she wasn't defending Blackwood either. The woman's true allegiance was still a question mark hanging in the air. Blackwood's lawyer rose, but Blackwood raised a hand, silencing him. His eyes never left Emily. "I understand," he said calmly. "But do you?" The words were a dagger. Emily's throat tightened. She knew what he meant. He wasn't just talking about legal definitions. He was hinting, again, at secrets only he seemed to know. Secrets about her father, about the deals behind closed doors. Emily steadied herself. "This is not about me. This is about the law." But even as she said it, a doubt slipped in. Was it really only about the law? Or was this a personal vendetta dressed in robes? The session continued. Witnesses spoke. Evidence was displayed. Blackwood's empire, once untouchable, looked fragile under the fluorescent lights. Yet his smirk never faded. Each time Emily thought the scales tipped her way, he dropped a phrase, a subtle insinuation, reminding her he still had cards left to play. Then it came. The door at the back of the courtroom opened. A woman stepped in, tall, veiled in black, carrying a folder. She walked directly to the clerk, whispered something, and handed over the papers. The clerk's face went pale as he read. He hurried to Emily, trembling, and placed the folder before her. Inside was a set of documents, signatures, bank transfers, a letter, and at the bottom, a name, her father's. Her breath hitched. It wasn't forged. It was real. The paper screamed of a truth she wasn't ready to face, that her father had indeed cut secret deals with Blackwood decades ago, trading influence for survival. The very legacy she thought she was defending had cracks. She looked up. Blackwood was smiling now. Daniel leaned in. "Emily, don't let this shake you. He's twisting history. Your father may have signed, but context matters. We can fight this." But the whispers in the room grew louder. The press was already scribbling. Victoria leaned forward, eyes sharp, as if savoring the collapse of a rival queen. Emily gripped the gavel so hard her knuckles turned white. For a moment she wanted to slam it down and end the session, to silence the chaos, to erase the doubts. But then she saw Blackwood, and the way he watched her, not like an enemy, not even like a predator, but like a teacher watching a pupil. "This isn't over," Emily whispered to herself. The hearing adjourned with no verdict. Reporters swarmed the steps outside. Daniel tried to shield her, but questions flew like knives. "Are the documents real? Did your father collude with Blackwood? Are you fit to judge this case?" Emily didn't answer. She just kept walking. That night, she sat alone in her apartment, the city humming outside. The robe hung over a chair. The documents lay open on the table. Her phone buzzed. A message. No number. Just a single sentence. "If you want the truth, meet me where it all began." Her chest tightened. She knew exactly where that was. Her father's old office, long abandoned, gathering dust like a mausoleum. But she also knew it could be a trap. Still, she couldn't ignore it. She grabbed her coat. Down the street, a car engine hummed. Inside, Blackwood watched her window from the shadows. His fingers tapped the steering wheel. He didn't look like a man beaten. He looked like a man waiting for the next move on the board. The game wasn't over. It was only changing shape. And as Emily disappeared into the night, the city lights swallowing her, one truth became clear. The real verdict hadn't been written yet. The gavel had fallen once. But whose hand it would fall under in the end, no one could say.